he was pretty anti-German, needless to say. He thought there was something different about Germans. He thought they were somehow or another defective because human beings couldn't do those awful things, right? That's the only way he could make sense of it all, that there was just something wrong with Germans in general, which, of course, we know isn't true, that human beings are capable of terrible things, and he just didn't want to believe that.
Right. It's amazing what people will think just in order not to accept one reality.
Yeah, yeah. It was his only way to deal with it. It really was. So, and later on he got Alzheimer's, and I always wondered if that didn't haunt him. You know, those things that from the past, or hopefully he could escape from it.
Right. Was there one like major event in history that just totally changed your life?
I think this. It's hard to understand today, but when I was still in my 20s, and I just graduated from college. When I was in high school, John Kennedy was assassinated, and that was horrible. And then Martin Luther King was assassinated. And that was in April of '68. In June of '68, Bobby Kennedy was killed. And it was like all of these people who were trying to make a difference were being systematically killed in this country. And I remember going out to the car the morning after Bobby Kennedy had been shot. I didn't know that this had happened. And I got in the car to drive to work. I was a teacher. And I turned on the radio, and I heard that Bobby Kennedy had been killed. And I remember just sitting there sobbing before I could go to work. And then I had to go teach. I guess it was 6th grade then, 5th grade, 6th grade. I can't remember what I was teaching then. And it was just a culmination of all of those terrible things. And it made me wonder where this country, was headed. It made me despair for the future. And it's hard to despair for the future when you work with kids, because kids always make me feel good about the future, okay? Because I see you as, yeah, okay, there's hope. Every time I work with kids, every time I teach, I am infused with enthusiasm. So I would say that was probably a real low point. Okay?
Do you think that the U.S. has improved as a country, or has it?
Well, it's changed. Yeah, over time. I think that I think our country is more complex. I think our country is more representative of more people. I love the idea of our country as a melting pot. I look around and I see all your different faces, okay? And different nationalities and whatever. And that makes me feel great, because I think that the more we're all mixed up, the more we'll understand each other. So I guess I feel good that this country has become more diverse, and that through its diversity is actually, I think, becoming more tolerant overall. Yeah, so I feel good about that.
How about adding on to that question? How do you think that the U.S. should change for the future?
Boy, I think that the United States should stay out of unnecessary conflicts. I would say that the worst thing that's happened in the last 10 years has been our invasion of Iraq. I see it as being, it's the reason why we're in so much debt today. And I can't see any reason for it. I really can't. There's a little bit more reason for Afghanistan, but I still don't think we had to invade the country. So I think the fact that we're involved in these conflicts and that it's cost us so much, and you're fortunate you're going to a school where you're getting a good education, but your parents are paying for it. A lot of people can't afford to do that. And so the public schools are getting less and less funding, which means it's going to affect kids because they're in bigger classes. And the bigger your class is, the less you're going to learn. I mean, it becomes about crowd control and not about teaching. So I guess that's my biggest concern, is how we use our money.
Well, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Okay.
Have you ever traveled outside of the country and had a real eye opener? So I know when I went to the Dominican Republic earlier this year, the people there just lived in pure poverty, but yet they were still happy. So it really showed me that money is not what can bring happiness. Do you have a similar experience like that?
Well, I'm not a third world traveler, so I haven't been to places other than Mexico where there's, a lot of poverty. I know it exists. So I don't think I've had an aha international kind of moment. And there are a lot of places I'd like to go. I mean, I'd love to go to Cuba. Cuba's not that far away. We're not allowed to go. So I would love to go to Cuba. I would love to see, I just love to see it. And I'd love to sit down and talk to Fidel Castro too.
Sure.
But,
He's supposed to be dead, but it's keeping him alive.
oh no, he's alive. He's alive, but he had surgery a few years ago, and he actually is recovering, but he's not well enough to rule the country, and so his brother is ruling it. Yeah. And so it's kind of curious to see what will happen to Cuba over time. But I've lived through the whole thing, the revolution and the aftermath, and Cuba is the only country that has actually tried to live according pretty much to the closest you can live to communism. And they have pretty good health care. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Sicko.
I saw it.
Made by Michael Moore, but Cuba actually has, their health care system it's not as good as ours, it's different from ours. And it has greater accessibility to everybody than ours does. We have the best health care system in the world if you can afford it, but not everybody can. So I'm not saying that we should be like Cuba. I think Cuba's kind of an experiment, but I'd be really curious about it. I think that I'd be afraid to go to Haiti. I had a student whose father is part of an NGO who said he'd been everywhere in the world. He'd been to Rwanda, he'd been to Southeast Asia, he'd been to India. He'd been in all of these places that are basically third world, and that Haiti was by far the scariest. He had to have a bodyguard every place he went. And can you imagine what it's like today?
Right, especially with your
Exactly.
and everyone needing
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah. So I would say, I know I haven't done that. And it was interesting because when I was a college student, I really thought about the Peace Corps. And I got married instead. I didn't do it.
Do you ever regret not doing it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the marriage didn't work out, but I love my children, so I have to look at it that way. But yeah, I think the Peace Corps would have been interesting, and you can still be in the Peace Corps. You can still do it. You can do it as an older person too. Some people do it, so I don't know. You never know. It's not over till it's over.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time now, but we'd like to thank you for giving us your time.
Oh, my pleasure. It was fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You know a little